Hello everybody and God bless. So I had this vision on the 23rd and what I saw was this guy and he was sitting in front of the TV or like a camera type thing, and he was like how I am, like I'm doing a recording, and he had his hair like covering his face, so I couldn't actually see his facial features, but I knew he was like strung out on drugs, and he had his middle finger up in the middle of the screen, facing the screen, and behind him there was a rainbow flag, and I had a knowing it was the Alphabet Squad flag. I say Alphabet Squad because at this point it's not LGBTQ anymore. It's like a whole bunch of letters. So we're just gonna call them Alphabet Squad. Anyways, so I knew that that's what it represented. And then on the flag that was behind him, it said, "Save the children." And so I had a knowing like he was trying to convince me that this is the way to save the children, get them strung out on drugs, cussing, and in the Alphabet Squad. And I was just like how stupid do you think I am? This, like, I was looking at him like, you're literally strung out on drugs. And I do believe he was most likely a straight up demon, like behind all of this, raising your children the wrong way. So I just want to say this real quick, like, we need to make sure as parents that we are loving our children with the love of God, not the love of this world. The world says, oh, gentle parenting, don't say no to your children, don't punish them in any way, just sit them down and talk to them, and and if they don't agree, then try and find another way because we're friends. God put you in your child's life to represent God in their life as well, right? God chastises those he loves. He spanks us. He puts us in punishments. So especially as a Christian, how do I explain it? So there's a way of gentle parenting when you're not mad all the time and you do talk to your children. That's fine. Make an environment to talk to your children. But I'm talking about those parents that are completely on the extreme of, I never punish my child and I practically let my child raise themselves. That is where this gentle parenting thing is starting to go towards. And that's what I'm talking about. I strongly believe is 100% satanic to not parent your children, because like I'm saying, God chastises us. He parents us. He's the ultimate parent. So the moment you do something like that that's outside of God's plan and will of how he parents us, you're automatically saying, oh, I'm a better parent and I know what I'm doing. God doesn't know what he's doing. And it's like, but what are you doing? And then you've got those parents on the complete other end of the spectrum that love to use the Bible that says, do not spare the rod. They love to use that scripture to justify them beating their children into submission and hurting their kids and things like that. So my point is, the way that you know how to parent your child is if you truly are following God and loving God and allowing God to lead you and guide you. Okay. And I'm not talking about what your pastor said, what this elder in the church said and all this stuff, and these people who have like 20 kids and all that stuff. I'm talking about what God says to you and where God leads you and guides you. Okay. And he can literally lead you and guide you on the smallest things. Like there was a night that Charity was not really falling asleep fast enough, I guess, and I didn't really pray for help or anything like that, but I fell asleep and I had like this quick dream, and I never posted it, but I had this quick dream and I was literally being taught to play Psalm for her, and in the dream I was shown that I was going to accidentally play Proverbs, and that wasn't going to work, and I was going to wake her up even more. But then when I played Psalm, I was going to make her fall asleep, and sure enough, I woke up and I did that. I accidentally played Proverbs because I couldn't remember what the dream was saying, and as soon as I did that, that's when I was like, oh yeah, it was telling me Psalm, and she went to sleep. And I've had incidences like that multiple times when God leads me and guides me to raise my daughter. Now my thing is, I understand that some people, being led by God, that is a process that you have to learn. I'm not saying it's just something that's super easy, you can just rip the band-aid off, I'm just gonna be led by God. It is a process you do need to learn. So in the process of being led by God, you need to use common sense. Use common sense when you're raising your child. Do you honestly think that God wants you spanking your child out of anger? No, because God doesn't have anger. He says has love, peace, and joy. You can spank your child out of love. You can punish your child out of love, because you have to understand that Satan, he likes to try and traumatize our children at a young age. Okay, so when you lash out at your child in anger, and I want to explain anger, okay, there's fleshly anger, and then there's anger from the Spirit of God. There's that righteous anger, and that's what Jesus had when he was throwing over the tables and making 3-cord whips, and he rebuked Peter. That, like, Jesus is love. Okay, and so when he was doing those things, he's doing them out of love with righteous anger. And that is a difference between being angry out of your flesh, when you literally can't control yourself and you're just so upset, you're yelling at your kid 24/7, you're not even listening to them, not setting an environment for them to talk to you and things like that. Now, granted, like I said, you have to use common sense. So your child, let's say your child is constantly jumping up and down on a bed, right? And you told them multiple times to stop. And I'm talking about multiple times throughout their life to stop. So they should know already that what they're doing is not right. At this point, I'm not going to warn you anymore. I'm not going to tell you what not to do anymore. You already know that what you're doing is not right. So boom, there is a punishment that needs to happen. I'm not going to say nothing because you should already know. Okay. Now, then you have to use common sense and see, is my kid still young? Or there's some kids out here who mentally just can't comprehend because there's things going on in their life mentally. So you as a parent, that's what I'm saying, like every parent and child connection is different. Okay, so you as a parent have to decipher, is my child completely ignoring me and they completely understand everything I'm saying? Or do they genuinely not understand? And that's when you have to understand, okay, does my child truly not understand? And then if you're like, I can't tell, you really need to take it to God. And even if you can't tell, just take everything to God. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. But my point is, if you're at that point where you're just like, okay, my child doesn't understand what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to put across. Yes, my child still needs a punishment, but I'm still going to explain to them, you shouldn't be doing this and things like that. Then when it's at the point like, okay, I see what you're doing right now is trying to tempt me, trying to see if I'm not going to pull through with my punishment, because I am. And I say that because I saw this video. The first time I heard about gentle parenting was this lady. She was like, I never say no to my toddler who's 5 years old, because my toddler, every single time I say no, she gets very excited and she wants to do it even more. Well, duh. I'm sorry. I saw that and I turned that off so quick. I said, what the? Yeah, your child is testing you to see if you'll give in. And sure enough, that's exactly what you did. You gave in, you stopped punishing them, you stopped telling them no. You talk about, well, I just redirect them to do something else. Okay, but that's not going to stop them from doing the first thing in the first place when they see it again and they want to do it again. Now you're redirecting them every 2 seconds. Like, what? Anyways, my point is, you have to use common sense. And I've talked about this before in videos about how, common sense is coincides with wisdom. And you cannot have wisdom if you don't have the fear of God. So pretty much you cannot parent the right way. You can't be a wife the right way. You can't be a husband the right way. You can't even be a child the right way, and honor your parents the right way if you are not submitting to God first and foremost. You have to trust him to lead you and guide you. And to go back with this vision I had, this is how the kingdom of darkness wants children to be. Because the kingdom of darkness, he says trauma in children at a very young age. And that trauma, they need to cope in some way. So they go towards drugs, or they go towards being violent. Like, I'll never forget, I'm in high school and there's couples that are literally like guys beating their girlfriend. I'm like, we're in high school. I thought it was called wife beater because they're supposed to be older. But no, they're young in high school. And I'm pretty sure I heard of it in grade school as well, like middle school. And I remember hearing people's stories. Oh, I've been smoking since I was 5. I've been drinking since I was 10 years old and all this stuff. I've been on drugs for a long time. I had intercourse for the first time when I was like 7 years old, sleeping with younger girls and things like that. And it's like, That's why it's so crucial as parents, we set this environment for our children to want to talk to us and feel like they can be talked to us and things like that. But you can't use it as an excuse not to punish your child, because you get into this point where you're so terrified of, oh, if I punish my child the wrong way, it's going to traumatize them. It's going to make them not want to talk to me. And I was talking to a friend of mine about this. So everything is spiritual. Okay, everything is spiritual. Everything comes down to the spirit. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Okay, and then remember, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Everything comes down to the spirit and what's going on spiritual. So when you're angry, you're projecting those spirits. You're projecting them, and your child is vulnerable. They don't understand. They don't know that this anger is coming from somebody else, and they don't know how to combat it. They don't know how to pray against it if they're not being taught how to pray against it. That's why it's so crucial that we're teaching our children about God from the moment they're conceived. You know, they're in the womb, start talking about God, and teaching your child how to cope with trauma and depression and things like that spiritually. Okay, not saying, oh, go to this counselor, go to that counselor. This lady a couple of years ago, she made a post on Facebook talking about her child is 5 years old diagnosed with depression, and she's like, I don't know what to do. I keep taking him to the doctor. First of all, stop, because if you're taking your child to the doctor and they were fine before they went to the doctor, and then they went to the doctor and came back and now they're diagnosed with depression. Okay. Be loved by God when it comes to doctors and stuff. Okay. I've talked about that before too. But my point is, that's not normal. That is not normal. That alone, hearing that a child at the age of 5 years old was diagnosed with depression, that alone should open up your eyes to say, God is real. Because this is not natural. Something here is not natural. And you need to teach your children how to take things to God. Okay? Now, what I was talking about, how when you project anger on children and they're very vulnerable, this is their vulnerable state. That's why Satan wants to get the children. Okay? You don't hear that many things about adults. You don't ever hear, oh, they're forcing the LGBTQ stuff on us at work, or they're forcing, us to learn about sexual intercourse at work. Why? Because you're an adult now, and you're not as vulnerable as an adult. Okay. A child is extremely vulnerable because they don't know how to read, so they can't read the Bible on their own. Somebody needs to teach them. They don't know how to pray right away unless, God is like, okay, I'm going to send some angels to this person to try and pray and help this child. But a lot of times children, they don't know how to pray. They don't know how to seek God. They don't know how to do these things on their own. And they're at this very vulnerable state. And as parents, we have a right to dedicate our children to either God or Satan. Okay? Now, stick with me. So I just recently learned this, but Catholic churches are extremely satanic. That I didn't just know, but this I just recently learned. So when you take your child to a Catholic church, most likely, very highly likely, that priest is dedicating your child to a deity, demon thing. You have not dedicated your child to Jesus. Especially, really listen, if you ever done that, and I really, really hope you guys are listening to me. If you've ever done that to your child, if you've ever had that done to you, you need to cast that out, bind and rebuke it, and break those curses. Because your child has most likely been dedicated to a demon, and that could be the reason why there are strongholds in your child's life that you're trying to figure out what is going on. Your child, 5 years old, depressed. Why? What happened to that child? Okay. And I also just recently read how there was this child that was born with all kinds of issues. I mean, the child was born fine, but then I think it was a couple of months later, years later, the child was just it was bad. Couldn't speak, could barely move, couldn't eat, really, really, really bad. And the parents finally sought God and found someone to help deliver this child, and they found out that there was a generational curse that was attacking this child. And you wonder, why attack the kid? Like, if it's a generational curse, why not just attack the parent? And again, it comes down to the child being the most vulnerable. This child is the most vulnerable being. It doesn't matter, like, if you're praying over your kid all the time and everything like that. You need to make sure that you have set an environment for your child to come and speak to you and talk to you. There's so many times as a parent, you've probably heard your kids say something go on in their life. They're probably like, oh, I was bullied in school, or somebody called me some certain name, or I felt depressed for some reason. And as a parent, you most likely, when your child said that, you probably went back in time and was like, oh wow, that did happen to me. And you probably didn't speak out about it. And I believe it most likely came from either shame, or you're just like, oh, it's just a coincidence. That is not a coincidence. And if it's coming out of shame, you need to cut that out and say, I went through the same things. And if this is happening to you, it is a generational curse, and we need to cast it out, bind and rebuke it, and nip it in the bud right now. Okay. And, so generational curses are very big. The way you punish your child is very big, making sure you're not projecting anger on your kid. And I am not saying this out of somebody who's never been angry. Don't get me wrong. I've been angry before. I'm still, trying to get deliverance from those things and trying my best to catch those things. But here's the thing. You may get angry with your kid. You need to recognize that as soon as possible and step away. If it's not the righteous anger from God, if it's anger out of your flesh, you need to step away. And then once you calm down, then you go back to that kid and then you punish them the right way with God, leading and guiding you. You need to rebuke that anger from yourself before you project it onto your child. Okay? And then when it comes to the generational curses, make sure you are binding or rebuking generational curses in yourself. And if you're in my boat, I have no idea about Charity's other half. I don't even know about my own other half. I didn't know my earthly father. And even that, just saying that alone, like, I don't know my earthly father. My child doesn't know her earthly father. Hello. There's a pattern there. And that's a generational, most likely a generational curse that I have already broken. I've already prayed against it very, very hard, to make sure that when God sends me someone, or God forbid we're still here on this earth, but if God ever sends my daughter someone, that, they are a right father, because I don't want that. That is a generational curse. It may look like it's not that big of a deal. It may look like it's a coincidence, but it can possibly be a generational curse. And I had to nip that in the bud right then and there. And I used to think, like, generational curses, when you break them, if your children are already born, you can't break it off of them. But I recently just learned that you can as well. Even if your child is already born, you can still break that generational curse from going on to them. And that's also why it's so important that we set this environment of talking to one another, because you want your child to come to you and speak to you about things going on in their life, so you can point it out, like, oh, that happened to me. Boom. We need to pray against that. We need to break that curse right here, right now. And perfect example, I was bullied all throughout my years, except for my senior year. My sister was also bullied very long time. And so when I was in senior year, I was 18, so she would have been around 8. And so I was like 17 going to 18, and my sister would have been 7 going to 18. And my sister, she opened up to my mom, and my mom went into a heavy prayer, praying against it and all that stuff. All of a sudden, I was not bullied anymore, and my sister wasn't bullied anymore. And when I believe that my mom broke that generational curse, even though I'm 17 years old and my sister's already 7 and 8 years old, I believe my mom broke that curse off of us. And then the curse of mothers in my family not getting along. I was terrified to have a daughter, because I knew, like, my great grandma and my grandma didn't get along. My grandma and my mom didn't get along. And I'm like, my mom and I didn't get along for the first couple of years. When I wasn't saved. And so I was like, I've got a daughter. I prayed so hard, and I'm still praying hard against that. So those are just examples, and I really pray you guys are listening to me. So just, you know, make sure you're breaking generational curses. Make sure you're setting an environment for your child to talk to you and talk these things out. Especially even if things don't happen to them necessarily, but set an environment where they'll come to you and tell you things that happened in front of them, things that they just saw. Because even just things you see can cause a trauma in your child's life, most likely. So make sure you're praying very hard. You're setting this environment where your child can come and talk to you. But at the same time, you're not doing what the world does. Because the world says the way you set an environment is that you never punish your child. That's not what God said. You know, I love God. I talk to him all the time, and he chastised the mess out of me. And I love him because he projects love on us. So I don't walk away from my trials and tribulations complaining about them, saying, well, I'm upset with God and I don't want to talk to him anymore, because I recognize that he was teaching me, and I recognize he was projecting love on me. And I know families firsthand that their children were terrified of the parents. So they had straight A's, they were good students, whatever, out of fear of the parent. When you punish your child, you cannot do it out of, I'm your parent and I'm on a pedestal. It's, I am your parent and you're supposed to honor me because God said so. You're leading them to God. You need to make sure that you are projecting the love of God and you're teaching them of God, because these families that I know, yeah, they had straight A's. Yeah, they never disobeyed their parent while they were young, but then they get older and it's like, oh, I'm free and I can do whatever I want. How many times have you heard stories like that? The kid was straight A student, everything's fine. As soon as they get to college, oh, I'm free. My parent isn't here and da 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 da. And I don't know nothing about God. I've heard about God here and there, but I don't know nothing about God. So I ain't afraid of nobody. I'm gonna do whatever I want. And it's because as parents, I speak for myself, we have to keep reminding ourselves. We have to make sure we understand that we are put in our child's life not to be a dictatorship over them, not to beat them down into submission. We're put in their life to lead them to God. Okay? To lead them to God and not Satan. So you have to constantly speak to your children about God. It doesn't matter if you don't think they understand. It doesn't matter if age of accountability or whatever that is. None of that matters. What matters is, as a parent, you're leading your child to God. As a parent, you're not going to the full spectrum all the way on the other side of, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to punish my child at all. I'm just going to be a friend to my kid. I'm not going to punish them at all, but you also want to make sure you're not going all the way in the other half of, I'm going to just beat my kid all the time. Da, da, da. You have to make sure that you are being led by God and in a happy balance of, what God tells you to do, what he tells you to do. And I don't mean to say balance, because there is a line. There's a line here, right? There's that all the way over here, I'm not going to do anything at all. And then there's all the way over here, I'm going to just beat the mess out of my kid. But God, see, there's this line right here, right? God's not even on that line. He's like, y'all over there doing whatever y'all doing, but I'm over here. And if you want to raise your child right, you're just going to follow me and do what I tell you to do. And so I hope you understand that. And just to, wrap it up to this vision I saw, this vision is telling me that if we are not led by God, because we have to remember this, y'all. I feel like Christians keep on forgetting this. There is no middle. You're either hot or you are cold. And even God said he'd rather you be hot or cold. Don't be sitting here going back and forth and stuff like that, because even if you're doing that, he's going to spew out your mouth. So at the end of the day, you're still on the other side, right? There's only two sides, light or dark, truth or lie, Jesus or the kingdom of darkness. Okay? So you cannot say, oh, I'm going to raise my child a little bit of how the world does, but I'm also going to put a little bit in what God does. You can't do that. And parents, you got them saying, oh, it's perfectly fine. It's just, they're just kids, or celebrating Halloween, things like that. You can't do that and expect your kid to be okay. and then turn around and be like, why is my kid all of a sudden upset? Why are they angry all the time? Why are they got this problem, got that problem, got this problem? And you're not doing anything. Now, granted, yes, at the end of the day, there is, we have to hold our children accountable. Okay. I'm not saying your child is 100% innocent and everything is your fault. I'm just making this to talk about the parents. Now, the kids and their walk with God, that is something that they still have to do. But as a parent, you don't want to be a Satan to them. You don't want to be a Judas to them. You want to be a light and a helper to them. You want to help and guide them as they are guided by God and help them see the way. Okay, we still have to hold ourselves accountable as parents as well. And that's what I want. I don't want to talk about the kids right now. I'm talking about the parents right now, because that's what this vision was really talking about, and how it came to me as a parent. Like, I get it if it came to like my sister, she's not a parent. And then it would be like, okay, we need to, talk about the kids right now. But I do believe that strongly in 2024 that this new generation is becoming terrible, and it starts with the parents. It starts with us parents. So many parents have these demon-possessed children. And I'm saying that metaphorically, but anyways, and they're backing them up. They're not doing anything to them. They're saying, well, there's just a phase. It's a phase they need to get out of. Where is that in the Word of God? There's a book in the Apocrypha, and it's this story, and I love it so much. It was this little boy, and I believe he was younger than at least 8. I know he was younger than 8. And the king at the time, or the pharaoh, or some wicked ruler, threatened this little boy and said, you need to follow me or I'm gonna kill everybody, right? That kid told him off and was like, I'm gonna follow God. I don't care what you do. And he killed everybody in front of him. And that kid was still like, I'm gonna follow God. And the faith in this child, I haven't read the story in a long time, but that part right there really sticks with you. Because that part right there, because I knew it was under the age of 12. I remember reading that saying, that age of accountability mess, that's out of the door. And where it comes down to is we as parents need to stop looking at our kids as, oh, they're young and they're innocent and they don't know better. But guess what? Satan also looks at them like that. They're young and they're innocent. They don't know better. So let me, mess them up. Let me cause this trauma. Let me cause these events that locks away parts of their soul so that when they grow older, they're messed up. They're messed up. And, there's certain things that happened to me growing up, and I recently just felt this relief because I felt like I finally got past the trauma of something that happened to me when I was very young. And I'm 24 years old, and I'm just now being relieved from the trauma. And like traumas that I went through in high school, it took me years. It took me about 5 to 6 years to get over those traumas. And it's crazy because the traumas that I went through as when I was even younger are the ones that took longer because I really closed that out. I was like, I don't want to think about it at all. I don't want to think about anything that I went through growing up. And even though like my mom, like she was a great mother, every single time it was just me and her, we had fun, everything was great. But, when I went over my grandparents' house, when I went over daycares, when I went to school, it was just trauma. So it didn't matter at that point that I, had this great mom that raised me, everything like that. I still had these traumatic little things that happened, and it may have happened just one time, or it may have just been something I saw or like that. But the fact that it just happened, it did cause this trauma, and it was revealed to me that it did cause a trauma. It was revealed to me that I needed to get deliverance from it, and it was revealed to me that I have been delivered from it. And I'm pointing that out because we need deliverance as Christians. You can't just say, oh, there's more good than the bad, so I can just ignore it, and there's that. And I just posted a video about that, walking on the path with God, and how there was this thing, this guy constantly trying to bother me, and I had to address it before I moved on. And so I say this also for you as too as an adult. If you're constantly dealing with some stronghold in your life, or you're constantly, all of a sudden you just feel depressed for no reason, or you feel some type of way, you're terrified, you need to really seek God and ask him, God, is there a trauma that has been in my life that I need to get past, and I need healing from? And let God lead you and guide you. You need to swallow the shame, swallow the pride, and say, God, I recognize that there's something wrong in my spirit. There's something wrong here, or there's a constant fear as soon as I think about these things. Like one trauma that I recently just got delivered from was I was terrified of getting pregnant again. So I talked about this before. I would love to get married, but the thought of being pregnant again was terrifying to me because my whole pregnancy story was just traumatic. Okay. And I had no idea that that trauma was still attached to me until recently. A friend of mine is pregnant, and recently, she was talking about her pregnancy and things like that. And I just got, it was so bad. I couldn't sleep. I was terrified. I was just thinking, I was tossing and turning. And then finally I let it out to a friend of mine, and I spoke it out, because with confession comes deliverance. So I spoke it out to this friend of mine, and I just let it all loose. I let go of the shame of what I went through. I let go of the pride of thinking, I can get over this on my own. And I let it out. And just that moment, just letting that out and recognizing the pain that I went through and asking God to cleanse me and to heal me from that trauma, I feel so much better. I have no fear at all thinking about that again. So I hope, you guys are still with me. I know I started off talking about, children, and as parents, how we're supposed to parent them. But I'm talking about now is the trauma and how to hopefully stop it from attacking your child. But also, if you as a parent see that your child has gone through a trauma, how to get rid of it. And then you also, as just an adult in general, if you're going through a trauma on your own, how to get rid of that so you can continue to move forward with God. You need deliverance. You need help to let these things go, right? So just to, make sure, let go of those traumas, punish your children out of love from God, and break generational curses and create an environment where your children can come to you and talk to you, right? So God bless you. Have a nice one.